Week 38 without a gaming computer. I'm gonna start off real quick. Really? Again. As soon as I start recording, he starts making annoying noises. Anyways, starting off real quick. The Frozen CPU site. If you're planning on ordering stuff from there, do not order stuff from there. Scroll down about halfway through the scroll of the page. You can find the site news. I don't know why the hell they have it that far down. Should be at the top. But they are shut down. So apparently, I looked around. Looks like someone, I guess probably the owner or something, either the owner or some other person, I think it was the owner though, had some sort of a drug addiction for a while and they finally went crazy. Pretty sure it's the owner because people got fired, everyone pretty much got fired. Their pictures, the store was torn apart and everything, stuff was scattered around. So that's not good, so that's closed. And because of that, I never got the compression fittings and the tubing that I had on order since I ordered the radiators and everything. So I had to go through PayPal and have them send in a little thing to get a refund. So if the site doesn't respond within 10 days, then I get that refund. So on the 27th, I will get the refund if they don't respond. And I don't think they will because their site is down. They're not responding to emails or anything. So, anyways. Yeah. Next up. My other little auto died. Same way as the first little auto. And I actually did finally find information, and turns out I was right. It's the moldy stuff that gets on rotten fish food and everything. That can actually leach onto fish. And that's exactly what it was. Kind of sucks. Because that's what happened. They were near the filter for far too long. They got infected by it. I guess it managed to erode away a little bit of their slime coating and everything. Just enough that it could get in and harm them. Because normally that slime coating protects the fish. But those little autos were so tiny, I guess they probably had very little of that slime coating on them. And probably not a whole lot either, just because they're an armored type of fish. I don't know if armored fish have less of that slime coating or not, but still. And the last thing actually is the graphics cards. Graphics card, actually not graphics cards. The graphics card and the cooling stuff, as you can see in videos on my channel, and you probably may have noticed from the other day or whatever when I released it, I did an unboxing of EK waterblock and backplate. I did an unboxing of the super clocked version of the 980, which is actually slower than Hydrocopper, but not by much, and I actually did save $72.43 by getting the super clocked version and adding the water block and backplate on my own, even though the shipping for it was expensive because it came from a different country. So, yeah, I now have my second graphics card, and I got that because even though the last week's video, I said I was waiting until the thing came in stock, wasn't in stock and everything, but I actually looked up. The one I was waiting for was just full copper. It didn't have nickel plating, but I looked up and everything because I couldn't remember anything about nickel plating, and nickel plating is apparently just perfectly safe in a system. There's no problems like if you run aluminum in a system. You really shouldn't have aluminum. There's certain metal combinations, but I'm just using copper in the system. So copper and nickel are just fine together. Anyways, so it is copper with nickel plating, and the reason I got that is just because it was in stock and I was tired of waiting for the Hydrocopper to restock. Though of course part of me still actually wishes I waited, because Hydrocopper actually came in stock again yesterday, and it was actually in stock, I don't know, until I went to bed at least, so sometime over an hour. Of course it was out of stock when I woke up, but it was actually in stock for over an hour finally, so that was actually kind of cool. But saving the amount of money I did by doing it myself, it kind of offsets it a bit, but it still annoys me a lot that I'm not going to have two matching graphics cards in the system now. I'm going to have two slightly different cards, but from now on, whenever I water cool a graphics card, I'm not going to buy one that's already got the water block on it and everything. I'm going to be swapping them out myself, because it really wasn't that much of a pain to do. There was a lot of stress because I've never done it before. It's like if you build your first computer ever, there's a huge amount of stress. Build it the second time, there's still stress, but it's a lot easier. And since I did the water block swap that first time, I was actually expecting it to be a hell of a lot worse, a hell of a lot more annoying. And so I went in expecting it to be a huge amount of stress, and it just really wasn't all that bad. It wasn't anywhere near what I was expecting it to be. So I'm just gonna swap out cooling blocks on my own from now on, so that'd be kind of cool. I just hope I got it all right. The instructions for the thing really sucked. It didn't explain why there were 3 different sizes of screws. It didn't explain which screw was what. It just gave some sort of thing, this code, like M2.5 or something. I don't even remember what it said. I think it was M2.5, whatever. And it just said that, and like, okay, you should know what this type of screw is if we're calling it this. But they should have showed like a size thing, like, oh, this is the small one, this is the bigger one, this is the biggest one, ha ha ha, you can now see which one we're talking about and which goes where. But it really didn't do that, and kind of sucked a little because I wasn't sure exactly how I was supposed to put stuff on unless I put in a screw, took it out, if it didn't fit, and then put another one. But it also took a long time. But the main thing I was worried about when I put that thing together was actually the thermal pads. That wasn't a whole lot of a problem though. When I got it, or when I was looking up information about it and I saw those thermal pads, I was like, this looks like it's going to be a bit of a pain in the ass to do, because getting them cut the right size, and it looks like they're really flimsy and floppy, but it's really not. It's a little different. It's almost like cardboard, just a little more flappy than cardboard, and it's really easy to cut, and you can fold it a little bit to measure better. And one of the strips, so you don't have to worry about the RAM chips on the card, getting those all the same size by folding and cutting, or folding, marking, cutting, or whatever. Those strips are actually measured out to the same, or the right size for those RAM chips, so you can easily just put the thermal pads over the RAM chips after you cut them on the line. That was actually really easy to do. Other than that, cutting the stuff out was actually pretty easy. The hardest part of those thermal pads was actually peeling off the plastic and the paper on them. That was actually a little bit annoying. And the thermal compound, I was actually surprised how much they gave. It was just some little tiny thing. Normally you get some big thing if it's for regular CPU, but for the GPU I thought it would just be the perfect amount. So I pushed it when I put the compound on. I pushed it slowly to try and get as little out as possible so I could keep an eye on how much I was actually putting on the GPU. But I ended up putting about twice as much as I really wanted to. It wasn't too bad though, so I just left it. I didn't wipe any excess off. It doesn't really matter if you use too much as long as it's not super globbed up. It's mostly going to spread out and seep out around the processor itself. It won't hurt anything if it does that though. It's a non-conductive material. It just takes away the heat. It's non-conductive, and what it does to take away the heat is it'll get hot. It's mostly usually silver mix, and silver is a lot better at taking heat away than copper or aluminum and stuff. So it takes heat. Then the cooling block that's pressed up against it, so this case the cooling block is the water block cover itself. That presses up against it and that heats up, and that pulls away some of the heat. Then the water is even better at taking away heat than silver is, so that's rushing over the top, keeping that cooling block nice and cold. So that makes it so that cooling block can take more heat from the silver, the compound and everything, so it just keeps pulling the heat away from the processor itself. But because it's non-conductive, it's okay if a little bit seeps out around the PCB, the other little components and stuff. It's not going to really make a big difference, and if those areas don't really need to be cooled off, since it's not like that spot around the processor is actually going to be touching the cooling block itself. If there's some leaking out around there, it's not really going to matter for the temperatures or anything. It's not going to hurt it. So I didn't squish it out and lift the cooling block back up and off, double check and wipe or clean it up or anything, because that really isn't necessary. You can do that if you're doing a CPU, but for a graphics card, if you've put in a full-face block on, you're better off not doing that, because then you might accidentally create some air bubbles or misalign something a second time. So you got to be very careful to actually line it up the first time properly. The CPU, you can easily just take a Q-tip and wipe around, because that's not completely covered. You can usually get into the edges a little bit around the cooling block, because it's not like it's going a full cover over the entire motherboard or something like the board of the graphics card is when you put on that full cover. And even if it's not a full cover, it's only covering some of it, like the GPU and the RAM and everything. If it's only covering that, then it's still a huge area where you really can't reach in with a Q-tip, and you can't wipe that away, especially because there's this sort of this wall, basically, around the GPU that kind of prevents you from reaching anything in there. So you don't really have to worry if that happens. So anyone that is worrying about or wondering why I didn't lift it back up and check, that's why. So now that I got that said, let's see, I guess that's it. Yeah. The nickel-plated version of that water block is actually a little more expensive than the copper version, though. But if you use nickel plating and stuff, then you don't have to use any corrosion inhibitor, because nickel doesn't corrode anywhere near as fast as copper. Copper will turn green, kind of like Statue of Liberty. That is actually made of copper. So originally it was the same color as a penny, but it corrodes when it mixes with oxygen and air, or when it mixes with water. Since there's oxygen and water, it will separate the water into hydrogen and create the copper oxide. So the main problem with using copper is you usually have to use a corrosion inhibitor, so you prevent that from happening. But with that nickel plating, you don't really have to worry about that. But since I am using copper, and I just want to make absolutely sure the parts are usable in the future, I'm never going to have a problem with it. I already had planned on using a corrosion inhibitor anyways, so it's not really a big problem. The only problem I have with it is that it just meant I had to pay a little bit more money for the nickel plating, because I was a little impatient and didn't want to wait for the copper to restock, and I got tired of waiting for the Hydro Copper 980 to restock, so oh well. Maybe sometime I will have two matching graphics cards, but this time, just like last time, I won't. Though this time, at least, I'm going to have a fully water-cooled system instead of a single graphics card that's cooled with a really crappy liquid cooling system that still allowed that one single graphics card to reach up around 51 degrees Celsius. I'm hoping this entire system, I don't know exactly how cold it's going to run. The two radiators I'm using, they're dual 140 millimeter. I'm hoping I can keep the graphics cards around 50 degrees Celsius each, and hopefully the processor will only be around 60 degrees Celsius or colder while at peak load for extended periods of time. But I have no idea how cold it's going to get, and that actually might be an overestimation. I don't know. I'm not going to be doing any overclocking or anything, and pretty much all the information about the temperature of the cards online and the processor I have online that I can find, everyone liquid cooling them is always using overclocking, so I can't really compare the stock clock speeds to overclocked temperatures. So, yeah, anyways, that is the end of this video. If you guys enjoyed it, feel free to let me know with comment, like, or subscribe. And you could share the video if you really want. I think this one actually went a little bit better than last time. The intro was a little weird because I was messing with my dog, but I actually had some stuff to talk about, so that's kind of cool. Holy crap! I'm gonna be able to finish my computer, though, in March. Well, not entirely finished. I'll be able to get it up and running in March. I think I already mentioned that before. I don't remember. So next week might be the last of these without a gaming computer videos, but I'm going to be continuing weekly vlog things. Even after I start getting playthroughs back up and everything. It's still going to be a while before I get playthroughs running again, though. Really, just because there's some extra stuff I gotta get, like a good new mic and a new version of Sony Vegas. I'm actually going for Sony Vegas, Sony Vegas Pro this time instead of the one I was using, and it's gonna be kind of amazing. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this already, but next week's might be the last without a gaming computer video. I'm not sure. It might be. It depends on when stuff actually gets here that I order, because I get my SSI check next week, so I can order stuff then, but it's going to take a week later, within a week later, I guess, before the stuff is actually here. So I don't know if I'll have my computer up within 2 weeks' time or a little after 2 weeks' time, but of course, if there is one more of these videos, then you'll see 2 more instead of 1 more, so there'll be a 39th and a 40th instead of just 39th. And if there is no 40th, then it'll be just a weekly vlog number 1 or something, and for where the 40th would have been. And I'll explain everything and show the computer up and running. I'm going to have a lot of work doing to get it all tested, check temperatures and everything, but I don't think that'll be a really big deal. It should be pretty easy to do because I've done that before with a computer already, and I'm pretty good at keeping an eye on temperatures anyways, so oh well. And now it's really the end of the video, so thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week or on some other video, but until then, I'll see you guys later. Bye.